Good morning from Vietnam. Good afternoon to you, Bonnie. Thanks a lot for coming back to our program and share your life story on a very specific topic that we are going to discuss today is about wisdom. So thanks a lot for spending your afternoon with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me. This is an honor to join you again, so thank you.
You're very welcome, Bonnie. Next time, if you have a chance with your family to travel to this part of the world, please let us know. We would love to host you and your family here. We have a lot of friends coming from Canada and America in the next 2 weeks, so we have it on the board here. So that will be a wonderful opportunity to see our guests, from virtual space into in person. That's going to be a wonderful opportunity for us to give you a hug. Okay.
Yes, instead of a virtual one.
Absolutely. And since you've been associated with the Vietnamese communities, the Asian community a lot also, it's an honor for us to have you to do a little introduction of who you are, the works you are doing. Would you please do that for me and for our global audience, please?
Okay. Let's see, how far back do you want me to go? We're talking about wisdom. I guess it starts like decades ago, but I actually got into business after being educated as a teacher, and I started teaching. A lot of people don't know that about me. I was a kindergarten teacher. I was teaching 5-year-olds, and I had 2 children of my own, and I got a divorce. And then, quite honestly, being a kindergarten teacher, which was not full-time, didn't pay the bills. And so I started looking for a 9-to-5 job. And I answered an ad in the paper for a medical secretary. And I went in and I pled my case about why I would be so good at this. I was pre-med for a couple years in college, and anyway, they said, no, we're going to train you and going to leave, you're too qualified. But then they called me 2 weeks later and said that they're starting a joint venture with a healthcare management company to open up a cardiac rehab center with 30 docs. And they said, do you want to come in and interview? And I said to myself, sure. But then, of course, I also said, what are you doing, Bonnie? You're not qualified for this job. Well, anyway, long story short, I did talk myself into the job, and I was managing that center for 1.5 years. And then I was doing well. And after 1.5 years, I was managing 11 of those centers. And that was my entree into the business. And, we're talking about wisdom. Some of the wisdom that I learned was on the job. So most people look at me and they say, oh, you were CEO of a national company. You made it to the C-suite. You must have gone to business school. You must have studied all this stuff. And no, I was like a sponge. And I learned the business world really on the job. In every job that I had, there were certainly new challenges and new opportunities. And that was kind of the way, my career went. Doors opened, and I didn't shy away from necessarily walking through them. I did walk through them, even though I may not have been 100% qualified. And I wasn't afraid to take those risks, or I wasn't afraid to make mistakes. And I think that that's important when we're talking about our careers and how we look at what our goals are and expectations versus what a potential plan is. On the one hand, we want to be really strategic about how we're going to reach our goals. But if we are afraid to go through open doors, if we're afraid to open doors, then we're going to stay stuck and we're not going to grow personally or professionally.
Beautiful, beautiful. And that's why your story is very insightful for a lot of us. I want to bring you to the moment that you got that call, all right? And it's they and whoever called you on the phone asking Bonnie if you want to go for the interview. And right there you got the imposter syndrome, right? So the who you are and how can we fit for this kind of role. That's a lot of people having that same question. All right. So what did you do back then to talk yourself out of those nervousness, out of those, like insecurities and open the opportunity to walk to the door?
So the thing is, I wasn't nervous. I grew up in a medical family, and I wasn't intimidated by doctors. The fact that I was going to manage 30 docs didn't cross my mind as something that I would not be able to do. But the first thing I started to do was think about how I was qualified and what my background was. And part of that, I know it sounds really silly, but one thread that I could connect was I was an aerobics instructor, right? And that's all about cardiac fitness. And so in my interview, I planned and I talked about how I knew how important that was, and I was passionate about it, and therefore I was, the ideal candidate. And the other thing is I kind of dug into my family history, and my father had a heart attack when he was 57. Oh. So it was when he was really young, but we completely changed everything in our lifestyle about, our diet and exercise and everything. And so I really knew that whole area, that topic, from personal experience. And I also tried to instill that I was really smart. You could teach me anything, and I'm going to learn it. And that proved to be true.
I'm curious to know that a part-time kindergarten teacher not making it enough money to cover for the expenses, and becoming a person in charge for one operations, and in a year and a half made it to national operation expansion. So there's a lot of learning, there's a lot of there's a lot of work in there. So what did you do to scale up and to get yourself ready for that scale up also?
Well, what I've been really good at, and I think this is important, right? You look at your strengths, you look at your weaknesses, right? Yes. And you try to leverage your strengths. I'm really good at building relationships with people. And I definitely knew how to build a web of what I call a web of influence, where you build a strategic network with focus and with intention on who are the people that you can foster relationships with, where you both can benefit, some mutual benefit, and leveraging those relationships when you need them. Now, I worked for a large national company, not that particular job, but another one, and I built a relationship with a colleague. We worked together on different projects. She was in a different part of the country. We had similar roles. And she was the one who, on the basis of her experience with me, told me about a CEO position that was open in the company where she was presently working. And she opened the door for me. And so it was through relationships. And when I look back at my career, every job I got was through a relationship or through referrals. I never had to, except for that first job, I really never had to go out and send out resumes cold and pick up the phone cold. And that's the beauty of having a network, and that's the beauty of having relationships, and not just shallow relationships, but an understanding with people about how you can serve them, how you can help them, and how in turn then they can help you and help open up doors.
Beautiful. There's always saying that relationship is everything, right? And that's wisdom right there you just shared. So let's get back onto the topic of wisdom, and this time we want to start from the very root of it. Okay, so start small first. So Bonnie, each of us will have our own definition of what wisdom is, right? So I would love to hear from your body that works, from your years of experience. What is that definition of wisdom in your own term?
Well, I said before that I'm a sponge, right? And I think that for me, wisdom is everything that I have absorbed on a personal level, on a professional level, over time. And that encompasses a lot. It encompasses not only my track record and accomplishments and how I've been successful, what led to success, the mistakes I've made, and the lessons that I've learned from those mistakes. So I think that, and I would add also, and the resilience to understand that you can learn from your mistakes, that there is wisdom to be gained on all levels, not only from the inner work that you do, but from what you absorb from other people. In a way, in part of my career, I've been pretty nerdy. I'm out of the corporate arena now. I've done a lot of research for both the books that I've written. I love kind of diving into that and really exploring what affects certain behaviors, what affects some of the policies that we have in the workplace today, and how that affects women in particular. And from that, I have let myself be surprised by some of the research and the results. So, for instance, when I was writing Not Done Yet about women over 50, I did extensive research. About 900 women across the world participated in my survey about what they were experiencing in the workplace, right? And I had participants from as young as 20 all the way through 70, 75. And I was asking them basically the same questions. But what surprised me, because I thought, oh, women over 50, this is where it's all, What surprised me was that women under 30, under 35, were 77% of those women were experiencing similar situations in the workplace as older women. Where, I went into it, I tried to have an open mind, but I did have kind of a theory that as you get older, it gets worse, but it turns at either end of the spectrum. So, not to kind of belabor that point, but to use it as an example of how you need to keep your mind open. Beautiful. You need to be that sponge. You don't necessarily know all the facts ahead of time, and you can't jump to conclusions and make assumptions if you really want to gain wisdom. You can't close down your brain because that's not really what you wanted to hear, or that's really not what you anticipated. So I think that that's part of how we gain wisdom is to keep our mind open.
Beautiful. Wow.
And to let yourself make mistakes.
Wow. Wow. Bonnie, I wrote in there is like everything is absorbed like a sponge over time, right? So the success, the failures, the lesson that we learn, being open for for learning from the experience, your experience and the experience of others, and also build resilience along the way. There's so much for me to dive in with you in this further. All right. So I want to talk first about mistakes because we can learn a lot from success, but we're gonna get back to the learning from success also because a lot of people also through success becoming fallen angels and right. So for mistakes, we a lot of us when we face with mistake we got discouraged. Okay, we got we blame ourselves for what happened, and because of that it stopped us from going further, trying further. Fear is getting to the way. Okay, and I want to help them to eradicate that thinking. So Bonnie, when you make mistakes, how could you talk to yourself to make sure that you get the learning? Yes.
I think it's a process. And I'm going to give you an example of a mistake I made and how I turned that into an opportunity, right? But it's a process, and you need to let yourself go through the process. So you make a mistake, and you're saying, "Oh, you're blaming yourself," and you have all this negative stuff going on in your head. Let that flow. Acknowledge that, and that's the only way you're gonna eventually let it go. Is to first, if you bury it and you say, "Oh, it was everybody else's fault," I had nothing to do with this. You're not being open to learning from that mistake. And I want to give you an example. When I was in corporate America, I worked 8 years at one particular company, and this is pretty early in my career, and I made it up to the assistant VP level, right? Company went through a merger, and that resulted in the fact I got a new boss, and there was a change in the structure. My position was going to be eliminated, and they offered me like a lateral position, which I'd have to move for. But behind that was the fact that I could have had a promotion, right? There was an opening now to be VP. But here's my mistake. We got the merger, had a new boss. I really didn't like him. He was intimidating. He was a bully. He was part of like the boys club. And I really didn't forge a relationship with him. So I missed out on that promotion because I had the track record. I was more qualified than anyone. But I kind of stayed invisible. And what I learned from that certainly is the power of relationships and the fact that I needed really for him to know me better and really get over myself, right?
Yeah.
And I learned from that to the point where I wrote a book about it. My first book, The Politics of Promotion, was actually, the original title was Anatomy of a Blindside. Because I thought I was going to get that promotion, and I was blindsided. And I was blindsided because I had no relationship with this new person. But again, when we're talking about opportunities, that's when the door opened for a CEO role in another company. And I left that company and took it. So, yeah. At one point, years later, I wrote a book and decided to help women to avoid being blindsided and what they needed to do, right, to be successful. But that was a big mistake. And I think it resonates with a lot of people, especially women, that sometimes our fear keeps us from doing what is really important for our career, and it keeps us stuck. In this case, I really lost out on a promotion that I deserved.
And fear seems to be really, really real to everybody. So how can we overcome the fear that anytime it could arise inside of us, inside of our head, inside of our thought, Bonnie?
Again, it's acknowledging it.
Acknowledging the fear.
And certainly I help my clients with this. And that is, well, what came up for you? So you had the intention of doing X, right? Say, asking for a promotion, right? Setting up a meeting with your manager and asking for a promotion, or raising your hand in a meeting and sharing your opinion. And you had that intention and you didn't do it. What I will explore with my clients now is, what came up for you right away? What was that voice telling you? And write it down and look at it and acknowledge it. And that's the only way that you're going to really address that fear, acknowledge that you have it, and challenge it and say, oh, is that really true? I'm going to get fired. I can't ask for a promotion. I'm going to be, my boss is going to laugh at me, or whatever it is. That message that you get in your head is one that you need to acknowledge, you need to verbalize, you need to write down in order to address it, because it's going to keep popping up, right? And each time it does, we have to go through the same process. If we bury it, first of all, it affects our health and our well-being.
Yeah.
If we are, swallowing all that fear, it's going to show up somehow in our body. Not to mention, mental health and our overall attitude.
Yeah. Wow. So face it. Right, the first thought coming into our head, and let's address it. Let's ask questions about that, why we are fearful for that, right?
Yeah, and ask, is that really true?
A lot of time turns out it's not. Right?
Most of the time it's not. Yeah.
So we talk about mistakes already, and then sometimes I think that wisdom also learning from the success, like you say, and learning. And so sometimes I saw a lot of friends of mine, the people I know, on victories, they forgot, to continue the path and growing. So, it's like on the mountain, the next step is to fall off the mountain, right? And we don't want it to happen to our audience, to whoever listen to this conversation. So in success, how can we accumulate wisdom and continue our path of growing, Bonnie?
Again, it's acknowledging it. So we really take for granted most of the time that anybody can do what we do, right? And we don't own it. We don't own our successes. We don't own our value. One of the things I do with my clients is to suggest that they keep a success journal. And every day, you make one entry, at least one entry into that success journal of something big or small that you've accomplished that day. And then at the end of the week, you read through the week and you say, what does that say about me? What does that say about me? Because I learned this long ago about success, that it's the Velcro Teflon syndrome. Have you ever heard that?
No.
Okay. So the good things that we do, or if we receive a compliment, you say to me, oh, Bonnie, you did a great job in that interview or whatever. And I'm like, I probably didn't. I should have brought up that question. I didn't really answer that one clearly. And we beat ourselves up. So that compliment rolls off of us. It doesn't stick, right? And we don't own it. However, so that success we don't own. I'm sorry, I mixed this up. Our success we don't own. Somebody tells us we did a good job, and we're and so it rolls off of us, right? But that same conversation where I could have, I should have, I didn't, that sticks with us like Teflon. So we don't own the successes. Those kind of roll off of us, and we say, oh, anybody could do that, or well, I really didn't do it that well, or yet the mistakes, or not even mistakes probably, because it's all in our head, that sticks with us. So the idea is to keep that journal, to keep reminding us of the success. And it doesn't need to be like, oh, I just signed $1 million contract. It could be, wow, I got to work on time. I got a lot done. I managed to leave early and go to my daughter's soccer practice. I got dinner on the table. That's a successful day. There's a whole spectrum of what you can put down in your journal, because it's important that you look at it over time and say, what does that say about me? And it gives you the permission to own it.
Wow. So if we have a journal like that, saying a lot of good things about ourselves, right, over the week, over the month, and what would that bring us? What benefit would that bring us in the long term, Bonnie?
Couple of things. First of all, it really helps our confidence, our self-esteem, because so many of these things we forget about. And because, we really haven't kept track of them. The other thing is, it's a written documentation of everything that you've accomplished, say, over the year. So when it comes to your performance review, and you have to do a self-review, you can look back and say, oh yeah, I really managed that project very well. And here's what the result was. But also, here was the challenges, and I really brought the team together. So things that we may forget about over the course of the year, we now have a written documentation that we can certainly share with our managers. And I'm a big proponent in setting up regular meetings with your manager and sharing each time what you've accomplished during that time period, whether it's 1 week or 2 weeks, and making sure that at the end of the year, or on a regular basis, quarterly basis, they know everything that you've accomplished.
Beautiful. Bonnie, another part of your definition of wisdom related to resilience. Okay, because I wrote it down as resilient. So what is that resilient? What does it mean to you? And how can we build the body of resilience inside of us?
I don't think we can really gain wisdom without resilience. Because, as I said before, it's important to be open to where that knowledge is coming from, not closing the door, and to understand that it may not be the path you think. So maybe you need to change directions. Maybe you need to look for new resources. Maybe you need to broaden your network. Maybe you need, if we're so stuck in the status quo that we're not open to being resilient, we're going to stay stuck. And there's so many situations over the course of my career where I can say, if I weren't resilient, if I weren't open to change, there's so much that I would not have learned. Even, going back to that first job, I didn't even know how to balance my checkbook at that time. I was young. What did I know about running a business, right? But I said, hey, I'm open to doing this. This is a new chapter in my life. I'm a single mom. I need to bring home some income, and I'm going to learn this.
Wow.
It's not the path that I thought I would be on.
Wow. So, the part is you showing to other people that your intention is that you are willing to learn and willing to do everything to deliver the result. But they're also on the other recipient end, so they have to believe in it, right? So in order for them to say, okay, although Bonnie is yet experienced on how to do the booking and how to run the operations here, but maybe I trust her, maybe I give her the opportunities. So what did you do to make sure that you got that trust, you got that opportunity given by them to put onto your hands to run the operation where you have, very limited knowledge about it?
Well, I think certainly over the course of my career, I did build that trust with a very solid track record that I was not embarrassed to share, right? Because it's really important for you to have credibility, for you to have visibility with your network, and as I talked about before, connecting and building influence. But with that first job, there was no reason for them to trust me.
Yeah.
And the way I opened up that door was with my passion for the work that was deeply personal, my commitment to it that was deeply personal. And also, I certainly brought up the fact that I would not have an issue managing 30 doctors in that center and tell them to come in and look at the notes and write off, check the box so we get paid kind of thing. And I think that helped too. I had confidence.
You had the confidence, right? So I want to bring you further before it, okay? I believe along the way when you're growing up, you accumulate the wisdom from the family also. For you, because you said that your family coming from the doctor background, and then you've been seeing that already, the practice until now you have 30 doctors to manage under your wing. You have no problem of doing it, right? But so how did that young Bonnie on the way to growing up in the family to accumulate the ability to think that she's okay working with 30 different type of doctors for that operation?
First of all, I was brought up with the value of education and learning.
Wow.
And that was something that was very important in my family. It became certainly very important to me as I got graduate degrees, etc. There was a lot of respect for learning, for gaining more wisdom within my family, and I think that that's a really important starting point. Also, I can hear my father's voice, like even right now, that telling me, Bonnie, you can do whatever you want to do.
Wow.
And it was that belief that probably helped me walk through that first door, that I can do this job. Yeah, the different parts of it, like the technical aspects of balancing, the balance sheet and running a budget and all this stuff, that stuff I can learn. But what I'm really good at is the relationships. Because if I just go into this job and say, I went to business school and I learned, XYZ, that would be great. But that wouldn't necessarily help me be successful without the personal side, without the softer skills. And so I was definitely brought up with that respect for not only the intellect and the technical part, but also the personal side to business, wow. Understanding relationships and working that way.
Wow. So you mentioned about the relationship. Let's go into that direction. Okay. At what age did you figure out that Bonnie is really, really good and that her strength is to build up and nurturing and expanding relationship, opening the network? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At what age?
At what age? Yes.
It was probably at the very start of my career, I would say.
And how did you realize it?
I don't know. There's some things that are innate, I have to say, that just come naturally for me. And I knew that politically this wasn't going to be an easy job, but I didn't consider that was going to be an issue. I really just jumped in and did it.
Yes.
No, I just think that's something that is true throughout my career. The biggest mistake I made was with that new boss that I didn't make a relationship with, where I lost out on a promotion.
Because a lot of us, I believe that inside each of us, we have hidden talents, the strength, right? That maybe today I'm not really seeing it, maybe tomorrow, maybe a year later on the road, and I'll be able to figure out what the strength is. So how can we help people to unveil it a little bit earlier so they can leverage their strengths a lot quicker in their personal and professional life?
I think coaching helps.
Coaching, yes.
It definitely helps. If you're in the workplace, mentoring somebody else where you actually can see how they're doing the work and acknowledge what they're really good at, help them see where they might need to do a little more work, and being able to champion them for doing that. And certainly, I mean, there are lots of tests out there that determine what your strengths are, etc. But I find that only takes you so far as a coach. Working one-on-one with my clients, I can help them through the experience of going through their situations and their behavior and how they react and how they navigate,
Wow.
to help them see that they have a real strength. And to me, it's remarkable and I don't know if this is a more female thing than a male thing, but it's remarkable how many women will discount those skills. And sometimes it's just that they're so innate, it comes naturally, and so we're like, oh, when we work on this, do this kind of work, it's like, oh yeah, that's true about me. Oh yeah, I can own that. But it takes somebody else to observe and work with you sometimes for you to recognize what that is and help them acknowledge that that's part, because a lot of it just comes naturally, and we don't recognize it, and we take it for granted, and we think, oh, anybody can build relationships. Oh, anybody, can tackle that issue. When in fact, nobody does it the way you do.
Yeah. Bonnie, when we're speaking about relationship, there's a different level of relationship, right? Some is very, like surface, some is very, very deep. And you mentioned in here that you say mutual benefits, so it's win-win for everybody. So how can you, in your world, what is that, when you build a relationship with somebody, what do you have in mind about the future of that relationship to be?
Well, and I write about this a lot in the politics of promotion, and that's being very intentional and focused on building relationships. So you map out the influencers, right? And who has some kind of say or power over your career, either directly or indirectly. Even if you look at your manager, who is in their circle of influence? Who do they listen to? Who do they go out to lunch with? Who do they call on in meetings? Who are the influencers, not just your manager, but in a broader sense, right? Who are some of your colleagues that know your work? And even your direct reports, right? Who are the people who could speak for you, who could advocate for you, if they knew you better even, right? And so I help my clients come up with what's called a strategic network, where they write down all those people who may have some influence over their career. And then you look at, well, how much influence do they have? And you rate it 1 to 10, 10 being the highest influence. And then you go to the next column and you say, how strong a relationship do I have with that person? 1 to 10, with 10 being the strongest. And then this is your personal sales plan, really. And you look at it and you say, oh, John has a lot of influence. He's like a 10. But when I look at what my relationship with that person is, it's only a 2. So that's an opportunity for me then to connect with this person, learn more about what their challenges are, what they're working on, and potentially how I can help them to reach their objectives. So you're not just asking, you're also serving. Wow. based on the value that you bring.
Wow.
Does that make sense? So it's very focused. Now, it's not static. That network, that map changes over time, but it's very strategic. And a lot of people just network, without any focus. It's collecting business cards. It's going out. They never follow up. They never build those types of deeper relationships. They're all about numbers, especially in social media now. I have 10,000 followers. You don't need 10,000. I mean, that's nice, but you don't need 10,000 followers. You probably need 10 people that you have a solid relationship with. And that's going to be the key to navigating the workplace and help you reach your goals.
Wow. So you mentioned in here that, like the relationship that the influence level of that person is, and, from 1 to 10, and then our relationship existing from 1 to 10, and then from there we have a strategic plan to get into, build that relationship up, right? And in terms of not only asking but giving values, right? But if you look at the ladders of influence, the higher in on the top, then it's harder for us to get access to it, let alone showing the values that we can add onto their busy schedule and busy operations. So how can we overcome that challenge?
Well, that's about networking, right? So you have a target that you want to meet somebody. Well, who in your network knows that person? Who knows what it might take to open up that door? Maybe you want to build visibility with that person, and what are their special projects and interests? Maybe you need to sign up for one of their projects, or maybe they're in an employee resource group where you would get involved so you have more one-on-one. But that's the strategy. I mean, not everybody is going to say, yeah, come on in and let's chat right away. Sometimes you need other people to help you open the door. But I also find that people, if you make the request that I'd love to know more about what you do, can you spare a few minutes just to meet with me? Because I see that you're in charge of this. What are some of the things you're working on? What do you do? And people love to talk about themselves. So chances are they would say yes without using the network.
So we mean,
both things work.
Yeah. So we have to have a really, really clear intention in our plan of what to talk and how to do it, right?
And it's not static. You can meet with somebody and they say, oh, you know what? You really need to meet Mary over there. And so, it just expands. And that's what I mean. You need to be open.
Yeah.
That your plan isn't cast in stone. That network has the same kind of resilience as your attitude should have.
Bonnie, because time is finite for everybody. So, a time for me to expand the network with this individual means that I have less time to, to build relationship and create the network with the other individual. What if I was wrong in my scale and leading me to a different, path? Yes.
So that's important. You can't be wrong. Everybody you meet will give you some information.
Wow.
And so that's something that could be a potential block. So I'm glad you brought that up, because somebody said, oh, I met that person, it didn't amount to anything, so why would I continue or whatever? No, everybody you meet, you just look at it as an opportunity to learn something, to gain some knowledge from that person. And maybe they're not going to recommend that you get a promotion, but they may give you information. Like, oh, you know what? Here's what's really going to influence decision makers. They're really interested in this type of work and these types of clients. So maybe you need to get more visibility here. So you can't make mistakes.
Wow.
And when you're talking about time, this is all something else that's really important. Put it on your calendar. That say every Thursday at 9, 10 o'clock or whatever works for you, you're going to set an appointment for coffee or whatever with somebody. And it could be virtual. Doesn't, maybe you're not in the office. But once you put it on your calendar, then chances are you'll honor it and you'll do it. And you'll reach out and make an appointment.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I have a couple last questions for this conversation. All right. And I want to go to the sponge metaphor again. Okay. Sponge has its lifetime also. So if we don't use it with care, then we want to use it up in a limited time, or maybe we can use it longer. So filtering for what comes into our life is important to make sure that our sponge is absorbing what is important, and so when we use it, it's not smelly and is good and stuff, right? So what can we do to to block or to help us prevent the to protect the sponge for us? Put it that way.
Protect it from what?
Protect it from whatever it could come in and harmful to our absorbing capability, or hurting our sponge.
Oh, that sounds to me like a limited belief. I think that one of the challenges that's important to talk about is how you can squeeze the sponge, how you can share that knowledge with others, how, and if something happens to you, you passed on that wisdom to somebody else because, you have generosity of spirit that you want to share your knowledge, you want to help others. And rather than protect that sponge, that you're willing to squeeze it, to use the metaphor, and let the wisdom flow to others who might find that wisdom helpful.
That wasn't my intention. My intention is like this. Gab it in, gab it out, right? So if we put onto the sponge only things that is not really helpful, so the more that we squeeze out of it, it's just a bad experience that we accumulate. We're learning from it. We share with negative experience to other people.
Right.
And yes. So what can we do to welcome it into that sponge? A lot of good information, a lot of opportunities, a lot of like positive things, so that when we squeeze out, is a good opportunity for other people to learn and to continue expanding that growth together with us.
Well, I think from the onset, it's important to be open to absorbing all different kinds of information, right? What we feel is more important than others, other kinds of information, we prioritize. We know what's valuable. We're having this conversation and I'm sharing what I feel is valuable wisdom. I'm not sharing with you some of the garbage that I picked up on social media today, right? So I think it's a natural thing to eliminate some of the waste and focus on what is really valuable and what's important.
Wow.
Is that more of what you were getting at?
Yes.
Okay.
So last question for this conversation today. Okay. Besides the word sponge, beside the word absorbing, there's one word that you use repeatedly also, Bonnie, is the word think. I think. All right. And my wife and I, we're always interested to help people to improve their ability to think through conversation like this, and by picking your brain on the practice, the way that you process your thinking over the years. So the question for you, Bonnie, is how have you been growing your own ability to think over the years?
I think it's everything that we've talked about. It's being open to learning new things every day. We're very fortunate. We have an unlimited access to resources and information through books and podcasts and conversations, and there's so much out there that sometimes it becomes, it definitely becomes overwhelming. But not necessarily entering into it with the idea that I have a limited ability, that fixed mindset, and there's only so much I can learn. The growth mindset, where you have an unlimited ability to learn new things, is definitely the preferred path.
Wow. Thanks, Bonnie. If you have one last word you want to say to our audience about this conversation, about one thing about this wisdom you want to share with them in the cumulative years of your living and experiencing, what would that thing you want to tell the people?
Well, I think what I really want to do is thank you for this conversation, because as we discussed earlier, I didn't really know what the conversation was going to be, but you helped me to recognize and acknowledge my own thinking about my wisdom and my experience. And so it's a good example, I think, our conversation, for what others can do to recognize their wisdom,
Wow.
to recognize what they gained over the years, what some of the important things, and also their attitude, right, about learning. So I thank you for this conversation, because it's helped me to clarify, and I think it can be a great example for others to do the internal work themselves.
Wow, Bonnie, thanks a lot. So I will start my success journal today, and I will put on that your compliment for this, onto my success journal to get it off.
Absolutely.
Okay. So,
Absolutely.
thanks a lot for spending your afternoon joining the program and share so many good insights for our audience in here. And on behalf of the listeners around the world, we want to say thank you. We want to wish you all the best. And personally, I look forward to seeing you in person. You come here or when I come to Santa Barbara, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bonnie, have a good day and good afternoon, and say hello to your family for us, please.
Okay, will do.
Bye-bye.